A former military scientist vanished from his home in a narrow window of time, leaving behind his phone, glasses, smartwatch, and even the clothes he had worn that morning. Despite extensive searches using helicopters, drones, dogs, and neighborhood surveillance, there was no sign of him leaving the area and no trace of where he went. Investigators uncovered missing items, including a revolver, his past work in classified aerospace programs, a brief connection to UFO researchers, and a recent cluster of disappearances and deaths among other scientists fueled widespread speculation. Welcome to Without a Trace. I'm your host, Jalyn. Every file holds a mystery. Every story deserves to be heard. This is Neil's story. Neil was born William McCasland in 1957 to William and Robin McCasland. He preferred to be called by his middle name of Neil. He grew up in an Air Force family. His father, a lieutenant, was killed in a flying accident when he was young, and his mother eventually remarried another airman, William Casey. Neil followed in their footsteps, graduating from the United States Air Force Academy with a bachelor's in astronautical engineering in 1979. He went on to attend the Massachusetts Institute of Technology on a full-ride scholarship. He graduated with a master's degree in 1980, and in 1988 he received his doctorate degree. Neil quickly stood out among his peers and became one of just a handful of lower officers given large program leadership for highly classified development units. Over his career, he served in a wide variety of space research, acquisition, and operations roles within the United States Air Force. These roles included director-level positions at the Pentagon, as well as commanding the Phillips Research Site of Air Force Research Lab at Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico, and the Air Force Research Lab at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio. Neil retired from the United States Air Force in July 2013. Following his retirement, he briefly worked with Blink-182 musician Tom DeLonge, a co-founder of To the Stars, a company that studies information about unidentified flying objects. Neil's wife, Susan, explained that Neil worked with Tom as a consultant on military and scientific matters to lend credibility to Tom's fictional work. In his retirement, Neil was an active outdoorsman. He enjoyed running, hiking, biking, and skiing. Neil was last seen at his home on February 27, 2026. At 10 a.m. that morning, a repairman was at the home and interacted with him. At 11:10, Susan left the house to attend an appointment. When she returned at 12:04 p.m., Neil wasn't there. At first, Susan wasn't concerned. She assumed Neil had gone for a walk or something, and he would be home soon. However, throughout the home, she began finding clues that indicated something was wrong. Neil's phone was left behind, and so was his smartwatch. Two things Susan says Neil never left the house without. Adding to the worry, she found his prescription glasses. Then, Susan found the clothes Neil was wearing that morning in the closet. At 3:07 p.m., she called 911 and reported her husband missing.
This is April. How may I help you?
Hi, April. My name is Susan Wilkerson. My husband is missing.
Okay.
And it's been about 3 hours, and I have some indication that he must have planned not to be found. He's left his phone. He changed his clothes into I don't know what. I think he's on foot. All of our cars and bicycles are in the garage. I left for a doctor's appointment at about 11:10, and he was here at that time at the house. And I got back from that at noon, and he was gone. He turned it off and left it behind, which seems kind of deliberate because he's always got his phone. He has a smartwatch. I don't know if that's with him or not.
Has he ever done this before?
Never. Nothing even remotely like it. He's a retired Air Force Major General. He's very responsible, but he's also facing some medical issues.
Do you have any video at your home?
No.
Has he been diagnosed with any mental disorders or anything like that?
Well, we've been seeing a doc for both physical and mental in terms of anxiety, short-term memory loss, lack of sleep. the same doc I went to see today.
Does he carry any weapons on him?
Well, not generally. He does have a gun safe, and I went to look in the gun safe to see if anything was missing, but I couldn't tell if anything was. He has quite a number of pistols and rifles. Other than saying if his brain and body keep deteriorating, he didn't want to live like that. But it seemed to me that was just a, man, I hate how this is going kind of thing, because I told him, yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Okay. We're going to send some deputies up to talk to you, see if we can search a little bit and see what's going on, okay?
Sure. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, ma'am.
Surveillance cameras cover both ends of Neal Street, but when authorities didn't find him on that footage, they canvassed hundreds of homes, combing through video provided by residents in search of him. However, he was not found on footage leaving his home. Everyone in the area was interviewed, and authorities have nothing to suggest foul play. Investigators searched a vast stretch of terrain using dogs, drones, and helicopters. As part of the search, authorities flew a helicopter equipped with infrared cameras over the cliffs and canyons near Neal's home at night, hoping to spot him by his heat signature. But the unseasonably warm spring turned the landscape against them. They couldn't differentiate between heat signatures and the heat from the rocks. Investigators searched Neal's second home in Colorado, roughly 200 miles from his Albuquerque home. There, they recovered a light green, long-sleeve button-up shirt and hiking boots. Unsure of his whereabouts and concerned for his safety, a silver alert was issued. Silver alerts are for adults reported as a missing person who is 50 years or older and whom there is a clear indication that the individual has irreversible brain disorder. Law enforcement disclosed that Neal was experiencing a mental fog, but due to privacy laws, they did not release more specific details regarding his medical condition. Authorities did note, quote, "There's no indication, and we are not putting forward that Mr. McCasland was disoriented or confused. Arguably, he would still be the most intelligent person in the room that any of us would be in. Highly intelligent, highly capable." The silver alert led the public to believe that Neal was suffering from some sort of dementia. Susan clarified that Neal is at some risk, but it's not from dementia, and that he was not confused or disoriented. She described her husband as a very responsible person, but said he was seeing a doctor for anxiety, short-term memory loss, and lack of sleep. Authorities, with the help of the public, continued searching for Neal. Dozens searched the neighborhood on foot, while horseback searches and drones searched the more difficult terrain of the mountains. 3 different types of search dogs were brought in, but still, there was no sign of Neal. On March 7th, 8 days after he disappeared, a gray U.S. Air Force sweatshirt was found a little more than a mile east of his home. His family and friends have not confirmed that the sweatshirt belonged to Neal. Still unaccounted for was Neal's wallet, a .38 caliber revolver and leather holster, and a red backpack. Neal's disappearance has caused a stir in UFO circles, which have suggested that it may be connected to his work. Before he retired from the Air Force in 2013, Neal commanded the Air Force Research Lab at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, a base that is rumored to be connected to UFOs. The base traces its origins to 1917 when the U.S. Army established aviation facilities near Dayton, Ohio during World War I. Military aviation was still in its infancy, and the site was chosen in part because of its close proximity to the Wright brothers. During the Cold War, the base became a center for United States Air Force technical intelligence. Eventually, the base evolved into one of the Pentagon's primary hubs for aerospace research. People are inclined to believe that the base stores debris from a UFO crash in Roswell. In July 1947, the U.S. military announced it had recovered the wreckage of a UFO from a nearby ranch in Roswell, but they quickly retracted this claim, saying the debris was from a weather balloon. Just days after Neal's disappearance, President Donald Trump announced that he was directing the Pentagon and other federal agencies to release government records related to the extraterrestrial life and UFOs. This announcement further fueled speculation that Neal's disappearance somehow involved aliens. though authorities say there is no evidence linking his disappearance to UFO research. Susan responded to this theory by posting on Facebook, quote, "It is true that Neil had a brief association with the UFO community. This connection is not a reason for someone to abduct Neil. Neil does not have any special knowledge about the ET bodies and debris from the Roswell crash stored at Wright-Patterson." This didn't help to squash the theories, however, as emails from Hillary Clinton campaign chairman John Podesta were leaked. Neil was the subject of an email dated January 25, 2016, from Tom DeLonge to Podesta, in which DeLonge says of Neil, quote, "I've been working with him for 4 months. I just got done giving him a 4-hour presentation on the entire project a few weeks ago. Trust me, the advice has already been happening on how to do all of this. He just has to say that out loud, but he is very, very aware as he was in charge of all of the stuff. When Roswell crashed, they shipped it to the laboratory at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. General McCasland was in charge of that exact laboratory up to a couple of years ago. He not only knows what I'm trying to achieve, he helped assemble my advisory team. He is a very important man." In addition to Neil, there have been a number of United States scientists with ties to U.S. defense and involved in space research who have gone missing or have died in the last year. This includes Los Alamos National Laboratory employees Anthony Chavez and Melissa Casillas, who suddenly disappeared, missing NASA employee Monica Reyes, and deceased NASA employees Michael Hicks and Frank Mywald. Jason Thomas and Stephen Garcia both had active government contracts when they disappeared under unusual circumstances. Additionally, Carl Grillmeyer, an astrophysicist at Caltech, and Nuno Loureiro, director of MIT Plasma Science and Fusion Center, were both shot dead outside their homes. Theories have swirled about the missing and murdered group of scientists, with some speculating that the similarities between the cases aren't a mere coincidence, and that the victims were met with foul play as a result of their highly classified work. However, Susan disagreed, again taking to Facebook to explain, quote, "It is true that when Neil was in the Air Force, he had access to some highly classified programs and information. He retired from the Air Force almost 13 years ago and has had only very commonly held clearances since. It seems quite unlikely that he was taken to extract very dated secrets from him." Susan ended her post by stating, "Maybe the best hypothesis is that aliens beamed him up to the mothership. However, no sightings of a mothership hovering above the Sandia Mountains have been reported." Although the theories surrounding his disappearance captured widespread attention, none of them brought investigators closer to understanding what truly happened. The search for Neil remains active, and investigators urge the public to come forward with any information that might help locate him. Neil is 5 foot 11 inches tall with white hair and blue eyes. He is believed to have left his residence on foot. Thank you for listening to Without a Trace. I hope you enjoyed our deep dive into Neil's disappearance. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and follow Without a Trace on social media, and join me next week as I dive into another case.